Hello and welcome back to Everything Boats with Captain Frank Lanier, where we discuss boats and boating, from maintenance and repairs to seamanship and safety, as well as everything in between. This podcast is a companion to my YouTube channel of the same name, so if you like and find it useful, be sure to subscribe and please check out my YouTube channel as well, where you'll find hundreds of informative videos on pretty much every boating topic imaginable.
So today we're going to be talking about LPG system inspections. Most marine stoves and grills use LPG, liquefied petroleum gas. It's efficient, it's relatively cheap, and it's widely available. It's also highly explosive, which makes regular inspections and tests of the system crucial. The goal of any LPG system inspection is, of course, to prevent gas leaks and being ushered into eternity in a fiery explosion of biblical proportions. In this video, we're going to be talking about the basics of LPG system installations and inspections. Always seek professional advice from a certified installer if you're unsure about any aspect of the inspections or we're going to be mentioning or maintaining your LPG system overall. First up, we're going to be talking about fuel cylinders and storage. All LPG cylinders must meet DOT, Department of Transportation, or ASME, American Society of Mechanical Engineers requirements. You can look for the stamp from one of those organizations. It should be on the necker of the tank itself, near the valve. Tanks can be mounted on deck or in a dedicated storage locker. However, in all cases, they must be properly secured and mounted upright, unless specifically designed for, horizontal installations. Cylinders mounted on deck will have to be located in a well-ventilated area where leaking gas can flow directly overboard. And they must also be readily accessible and protected against weather and or mechanical damage. Per ABYC, American Boat and Yacht Council standards, dedicated LPG storage lockers must be vapor tight to the vessel's interior. They must also be located above the waterline and be constructed of or lined with corrosion-resistant materials. When inspecting your LPG locker, ensure that it has a gasketed cover that latches tightly. It only opens from the top, and it can quickly be opened without tools, so you can access it easily and shut off the valve during an emergency. LPG lockers must also open directly to the outside atmosphere. LPG lockers can be located inside of a cockpit locker if mounted high enough that the LPG locker lid cannot be opened without opening the cockpit locker first. LPG lockers must also have a dedicated drain, 1/2 inch minimum, located at the bottom that vents directly overboard. A dedicated locker means just that. Nothing in the LPG storage locker that is not part of the LPG system. Check the LPG locker bottom, sides, and seams for damage, such as corrosion, cracks, or holes. Anything that can allow gas leaks into the vessel interior. Ensure the locker vent hose slopes downwards and is free of blockages, loops, and kinks. Some of the problems I find when inspecting LPG lockers is that you've got the locker drain, and then you may have a loop that goes up to the discharge for the locker itself. This, of course, that loop prevents it from draining out properly if you have a gas leak. So you want to make sure that it has a steady slope down. There's no kinks or cracks or anything in the hose itself. The vent discharge outlet must be located below the locker, and it must exit the hull above static waterline. It must also be at least 20 inches away from any other openings, air intakes, sink or bilge pump discharge hoses, exhaust hoses, anything, any opening that could allow a leaking LPG gas to re-enter the vessel. Every LPG system is required to have a readily accessible manual or electronically operated shutoff valve. This is the electric solenoid you may have in the system, where you can operate it from the appliance. But, the stove, for example, you energize it, it turns the solenoid on and allows LPG to flow down to the appliance. And of course, you can shut it off with the remote solenoid as well. Your solenoid valve must be installed either in the low or high pressure line at the cylinder. Solenoid remote controls must be installed near the appliance it serves and be able to be operated without reaching over the top of any open flames and stuff. In other words, if you have a stove, you don't want to have to reach over the stove to shut the solenoid valve in case you have a flare-up or whatever. Fuel lines. Although copper is used throughout the world in LPG installations, flexible LPG hose is probably safer for marine use. Inspect your hoses for cracks, brittleness, kinks, and chafing. Ensure your hoses are also protected by grommets at each bulkhead, partition, or deck penetration. For copper lines, verify that all fittings are long nut flare fittings. Short nut flare fittings, such as the one used for refrigeration systems, are less reliable and prone to failure due to vibration. For flexible hose, check that the outer jacket indicates compliance with Underwriters Laboratory UL21 LPG gas hose. All end fittings for your hoses must be permanent types, such as suede sleeve or sleeve and threaded inserts. The big no-no here that I often see: no hose clamp fittings for your LPG gas hoses. You can't just put them over there and use a hose clamp. It has to be a manufactured fitting or manufactured in on the hoses. Finally, each appliance, galley stove, cockpit, grill, whatever, has to have its own dedicated supply line. Each line must originate from inside the propane locker or tank enclosure at the solenoid valve. And the hose should also be a continuous run. You don't want to have any breaks, T-fittings, or shut-off valves or anything. And the reason behind all of this is so that you have the least amount of connections inside the vessel, which, again, a connection or a hose connection, a T or whatever, is another potential point for leaks. So you'll want a continuous hose run from your locker all the way down to the appliance, whether it's your galley stove or heater or whatever. Now let's talk about pressure regulators and gauges. Every LPG system has to have a pressure regulator designed for use with LPG. For deck-mounted cylinders, verify that the regulator's relief valve outlet discharges overboard at least 20 inches from any opening, just like your locker vent. 20 inches from any opening that could reinduce the LPG back into the vessel. A pressure gauge is also required, must be installed on the cylinder side of your pressure regulator. Now, the purpose of the LPG gauge is not to tell you how much fuel you have in the system, although it will do that. The purpose of that LPG pressure gauge is to allow you to conduct what's called a leak down test. And this leak down test enables you to check the system for leaks. To conduct a leak down test is very simple. First off, you open up your valve on your tank and you open up your solenoid, okay? And what this does is it energizes the line from the LPG tank to the appliance. And we're using a stove as an example here, right? So you energize the line and then you shut off the tank. Don't shut off the solenoid, because if you shut off the solenoid too, then you're only checking from the tank to the solenoid. And now you're going to note what the pressure gauge reading is. And then you let it sit there for 3 minutes, and it should maintain that same pressure for at least 3 minutes. And if it doesn't, then you have a leak or leaks that have to be addressed before you can use the system. You're going to use a leak detection fluid or detergent solution to locate the leaks. Where are the leaks going to be typically? You'll find them mostly at fittings and connections, right? Although they can occur anywhere in the system due to chafe or physical damage. When you are testing these connections and fittings and stuff for leaks, don't use any solution that contains ammonia, as it can attack the brass fittings on most of the connectors or the connections and stuff. And unless you want top billing in the Darwin Awards website, never use an open flame to check for leaks. You would think that's pretty common sense, right? But a lot of people will do it, right? They put a lighter there and they can see a little flame coming out. Oh, this has got a leak. Well, yeah. So strange. The truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. Now what we're going to do is talk about most excellent ideas. First of all, check your LPG system weekly for leaks. Installation of a marine-grade LPG sniffer or fume detector is highly recommended safety upgrade. If you have one installed, ensure the gas sensor is located as low as possible and near the range or appliance where leaking gas is likely to accumulate, and that you test the sensor operation on a regular basis. After cooking, leave one burner ignited, turn off the solenoid or tank valve, and when the burner goes out, close the valve. This empties the line of gas and prevents leaking should a burner valve fail to seal or whatever, right? And finally, close your tank valve in addition to the solenoid valve if the system is not in use, particularly if you plan on leaving the vessel for an extended length of time. The solenoid valve should always be closed when the system is not in use.
I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And if so, and you want to buy Captain Frank a cup of coffee, please click on the support link in the text description below. All monies received, not spent on coffee, will go towards making even more awesome podcasts for my channel. And as always, thank you for your support.